Good day to you wherever you are joining from. Thank you so much for tuning in for this AI Foundation launch webinar. We have a packed session prepared for you. Before I hand it over to our expert speakers, some household items. We are recording the session and the video will be made available later this week. The recording will also include a link to the slides that we're using today. So if you want to make notes, don't worry, we'll include everything. We encourage you to ask questions as well. There is a questions panel by default on the lower right section of your screen, and we're planning a brief Q&A session at the end, question and answer session at the end. The agenda for today looks as follows. We'll first introduce the CCC before we do a deep dive into AI and the AI Foundation certification. With that being said, it's time for me to hand over to today's speakers. Mark Sudhakar, would you please introduce yourselves and start the session? Mark, you first, please.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session. My name is Mark O'Loughlin. I'm the Managing Director of the Cloud Credential Council, the CCC, which is home of Digital Ready Professionals. So I'm happy to be here. And Sudhakar?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Joey and Mark. And I'm an expert trainer and author with Cloud Credential Council. Also an author of this particular AI Foundation course that we'll be going through. And so, yes, welcome all.
Thank you so much, Sudhakar. So Sudhakar is a subject matter expert in all things AI, which is fantastic to have him join today. So he's going to look into some interesting areas within the domain of artificial intelligence. But before we do that, again, just welcome you to today's session as we look at Artificial Intelligence Foundation course from the CCC on this launch. So CCC supports individuals and organizations in their digital transformation journey, and we do this by optimizing talent and developing skills for digital ready professionals. Now we achieve all this through the CCC professional certification portfolio, and our portfolio covers AI, cloud, big data, IoT, and blockchain. CCC certifications and overall portfolio are vendor neutral, and that allows us to focus on developing digital ready professionals who can help organizations succeed in their digital ambitions. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Sudhakar, who's going to take us through a look at AI, and then I'll join you for a few more facts a little bit after that. So Sudhakar, over to you for a couple of moments.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me on this webinar. So let's try and understand what is artificial intelligence and what we cover in this course. For many individuals and organizations, AI or artificial intelligence simply refers to isolated robots, drones, driverless cars, or virtual assistants. Just classifying these various use cases or applications of AI is not enough. To begin with, one should be able to clearly explain the term intelligence and then the distinction between natural and artificial intelligence. It's also imperative to understand that AI is a collection of technologies, and the technologies, their benefits, and their particular challenges. This course is a step to understand the basics of AI and also provides a deep dive on the prerequisites one should have for working with AI. AI actually is a branch of computer science in which machines tend to learn and make decisions similar to humans. In the past, machines have ideally performed on the basis of commands and programs that were provided by humans. But in recent years, these machines are slowly being empowered to additionally think, observe, analyze, and learn from data, just as we humans do. Also, AI becomes smarter with time when it is exposed to more diverse data sets and patterns. Similar to earlier technologies like the PC, internet, cloud computing, and IoT, AI today is also seen as the dawn of a new revolution in digital transformation services. Though it's not a new technology, AI started gathering popularity and momentum after a spate of successes. And based on these results, many organizations rushed in to capitalize on some quick returns. But the reality is, only a few of them achieved wonders, while others failed so miserably that their massive investments went down the drain. We shall be looking at some of these use cases later on in this webinar. But despite all these setbacks, AI is here to stay. Estimates suggest that AI has the potential to add $14 trillion to the global economy over the next decade. Researchers also predict that in this same time period, AI will even outperform humans in certain activities such as language translation, customer service, remote surgery, authoring a book, and so on. From voice assistants to predictive maintenance to smart home automation and wearables, AI today can practically be utilized in most of the industrial sectors and societies. Let us quickly step back and look first at the evolution of AI. AI today is considered to be at the core of the fourth industrial revolution. The focus of the first industrial revolution was on mechanical production, railroads, steam power, while the second dealt with mass production, electrical power, and the advent of the assembly line. The third era introduced electronics and computers and brought about automated production. And today, the fourth and current one focuses on big data analytics, AI, advanced robotics, digital twins, and many other evolving technologies. AI was actually first coined in 1955 by John McCarthy and a few other scientists that met at a conference in Dartmouth, US. Looking at the definitions of AI, there is no standard definition as such. John McCarthy defined AI as simply the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. Gartner, a well-known research survey firm, had this definition of AI, which translates to applying advanced analysis and logic-based techniques, including machine learning to interpret events, support, and automate decisions and take action. Amazon, one of the world's leading cloud service provider, defines it as the field of computer science dedicated to solving cognitive problems commonly associated with human intelligence, such as learning, problem solving, and pattern recognition. If you go onto Google and search for the definition of AI, you will get hundreds of such definitions, many with technical jargon. But I feel John McCarthy's definition is the simplest of them all, the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. And we shall use this as the basis for our particular course. Let us delve into the top drivers of AI. The first one is a customer-centric approach. Digital transformations focus today is shifting from the importance of the core business strategy to actually the customer's needs. Now the focus on the product, its competence or market is secondary in nature. What is required is today's products should be on demand, customizable, connected, and shared. The second factor is a big data explosion. The usefulness of AI for organizations is directly proportional to the speed, quality, and amount of data that can be collected from multiple data sources, such as structured databases, social media messages, videos, photos, IoT sensors, and others. Big data needs to be mined properly, cleaned, wrangled, transformed, formatted, etc., to obtain the best analytic results. Another top driver is today's emerging faster and powerful hardware. So chips such as tensor processing unit and neural processing unit are available today that are much more powerful than their predecessors. We also have a top driver as advanced algorithms to perform complex tasks within a matter of minutes. What used to take days and hours and weeks is now reduced to just a matter of a few hours or minutes. And finally, the last top driver we look at in this slide is talent. Human talent is as critical to the AI equation as machines, because it's a human who finally decides on what and how machines need to be taught. In fact, even if you have the best of data, the most powerful and faster of hardware, advanced algorithms, all this means nothing if the human talent itself is missing. This slide lists some of the top UI use cases, such as we have customer services and experience. You may have heard of Amazon's Go, payless shopping, cardless shopping, or automated help desks through virtual assistants. You have fraud detection, where you can easily look for identity theft, incorrect insurance claims, or false personal details furnished in loan applications. In human resources, the application is used for hiring and managing talent, background checks, convictions, and so on. Predictive analytics helps in preventing downtime and accidents. It streamlines the supply chain. Operations management optimizes and enhances productivity. And researchers in the medical field, for example, can improve upon drug effectiveness, remote surgery, reducing pain or suffering. And so in real life applications, which in industries and homes, we look at John Deere, one of the leading farm equipment manufacturer, has new tractors which rely on AI to apply micro squirts of pesticides, replacing crop dusters. Amazon Alexa and Google Home provide voice-controlled AI assistant products for the home. Mayo Clinic uses robots in the operating room to enhance precision, flexibility, and control during an operation. Walmart is using robots to monitor price tags and missing items on shelves. Coca-Cola uses AI to manage inventory of soft drinks across various geographies. Delta Airlines uses the first facial recognition for flight check-ins with its all biometric terminal. And Disney uses AI to keep track of visitors to their multiple theme parks. So here we look at some of the examples of several epic and not so epic failures of prominent organizations which, with so much fanfare, started their AI journey just to find that their dreams were shattered and goals unattainable. IBM partnered with doctors and cancer centers and used AI almost with an investment of $62 million for their product Watson to diagnose and treat cancer patients. But the product, however, provided major erroneous and dangerous treatment recommendations, and so the project had to be abandoned. IBM did not realize that the hypothetical tests that were carried out would not be an equivalent treatment to real-life situations. Microsoft made big headlines when unveiling their chatbot Tay, which was supposedly meant to chat with people and become smarter the more it engaged and conversed. Unfortunately, people started tweeting crude, vulgar, and racist remarks at the bot. In a matter of hours, Tay itself started using foul and offensive language, and Microsoft had to call off this venture. Microsoft was actually not prepared for this kind of failure. Actually, it was more of a catastrophe. Amazon scrapped their AI-developed hiring project when they realized that it was biased against women. Facebook shut down their two chatbots, Bob and Alice, when it found that they developed their own chat language, which people claimed as scary and total jargon. The famed Apple released its iPhone with much aplomb and boasted of facial recognition, one of the key capabilities of AI. However, this very feature failed when it got fooled by a human wearing a plastic mask and was unable to unlock the phone. Another major flaw detected was its inability to differentiate between identical twins. It was observed that Google Home Minis had been secretly turning on and recording thousands of minutes of audio of their owners and sending the tapes to Google. Once confronted, Google quickly announced a patch to prevent the issue. And lastly, an ethical debate sparked, and it is still continuing, as to who is responsible for the death of a pedestrian in the US, which was killed by an Uber's self-driving car. So let us consider some examples of successful or amazing use cases achieved through the use of AI. IBM has been at the forefront of AI for years. In fact, in 1997, almost 24 years ago, IBM's Deep Blue computer became the first to conquer a human world chess champion. Who does not remember Google's AlphaGo program, which was the first to beat a professional player at the game of Go? Another AI innovation from Google is Google Duplex, an extension of Google Assistant, which uses natural language processing and through an AI voice interface can make phone calls and schedule appointments on your behalf. Amazon offers a new convenience store concept called Amazon Go, where no checkout is required. The stores have AI technology that tracks what items you pick up and then automatically charges you for those items through the Amazon Go app on your phone. Since there's no checkout, you bring your own bags to fill up with items, and there are cameras watching your every move to identify every item you put in your bag to ultimately charge you for it. Baidu, an equivalent of Google, uses an artificial intelligence and deep learning tool called Deep Voice, which needs only 3.7 seconds of audio to clone a voice. With this technology, the tool can read books to you in the original author's voice, all automated with no recording studio necessary. Facebook uses deep text a text understanding engine to automatically understand and interpret the content and emotional sentiment of the thousands of posts which are in different multiple languages that its users publish every second. Another use case is a deep face, where the social media giant can automatically identify you in a photo within the group that is shared on their platform. Alibaba, a major cloud provider, uses artificial intelligence in its City Brain project to create smart cities. The project uses AI algorithms to help reduce traffic jams by monitoring every vehicle in the city. Consumer Medical developed a new program that leverages AI and predictive analytics to identify patients considering surgery and evaluates whether these operations are actually necessary or if there are other alternatives with far less risk involved that would better help them in the long run. It's not infrequent for patients to undergo surgeries which may later prove to be unnecessary. These unneeded procedures force people to face totally avoidable risks, anxious moments, and burdensome surgical expenses. And with this, there are many other plenty of smaller, low-profile businesses who have benefited from the use cases of AI. So thank you all for listening to this part of the webinar, and over to you, Mark and Joey, for the remainder of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Sudhakar. Some really interesting points there. I have to agree with you regarding definition of artificial intelligence. As you said, you know, you Google this and you will get a huge amount of different things. I do like what you presented there, and specifically the John McCarthy one that we're very familiar with. AI being the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. I think that's very key. We're going to have another definition come up that came up on a podcast recently, so we'll probably talk a little bit about that in a moment. Interesting from the success stories, which there are a lot of success stories. Delta, I think, is a really, really good one, that you have this all biometric kind of check-in scenario, which is really good, as long as people understand that and accept that. So there might be an element of acceptance, but that is a fantastic use case of where it goes well. And then sometimes, there will be failures. I know you present them there, but we always suggest that it's not a failure if there's some learning from it. I'm sure all of these organizations have invested, they've learned from it, and they're trying to figure out something new. But also, failure can be very expensive to organizations, so you want to try and get your AI strategies right to start with. But there can also be reputational damage, and as even with Uber, ethical debates there as well. So I think these days the technology can be a little bit easier because it's available and we can use it. But there's lots of other areas that we need to look at. And I think we cover a lot of that within the AI Foundation course as well, that it's fairly blended like that. And looking then at career opportunities. So, it leads into looking at today's AI is really built on cloud and digital services. As Sudhakar showed us that timeline. AI in a phrase isn't new, it's been around a long time, but the technology today is completely different. The technology is more powerful, it's easier to use, it's so accessible today than at any other time in the past. So this means now that there is a lower barrier to entry to get access to AI resources and to start using AI. What that means is it places artificial intelligence, the AI, as a growth industry, both for business opportunity, but a growth industry for career development and career opportunity also. Why is this? Ultimately, businesses need to understand what AI is, what they can do with AI, how they might get a competitive advantage or something different from using AI, how they can streamline a process, for example, Delta with a check-in, and how to make AI work with their existing IT and business services. That's where the challenges really lie. And I think the AI professional can help any organization work through and address these types of challenges. An AI professional can identify solutions and lead successful AI initiatives in any organization, in any sector, and in any vertical, in any market. So it's a career opportunity, it's a growth opportunity in industry in general. I think an educated AI professional can therefore be, I would suggest, very versatile, which could lead to a very versatile career, maybe in an uncertain global job market, but certainly organizations are looking at AI, at how do we streamline a process, how do we change a process, how do we affect customer interaction, how do we do something different, how do we gain competitive advantage. Sudhakar, just a question for you maybe, from your experience, are you seeing, is there a single sector in which AI is more prominent in, or is it like what I'm saying, it's all sectors?
It is all factors. It is widespread across many industries.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair enough to say. I think you're seeing that too. And I think that is the absolute growth opportunity for the career professional. Is AI is in its infancy today, and is only going to explode because of what it can do. But I think it's true to say the technology is there. Now, we do have to do a lot of work with the technologies to make sure it's safe, secure, to understand it, to use it well. But we also have to address those business challenges in order to get things right. I guess from jobs in AI, from roles, AI roles will absolutely be found in tech companies, especially the large blue chips. We represent a couple of them here. A few popular roles, by no means limited to these: AI and machine learning engineer, example from Amazon; business intelligence developer, for example, from Microsoft; data scientist, that ever evolving role, NVIDIA. And these and similar roles will also exist and are extremely popular in non-IT and non-technology firms. And why? It's because AI is being used to expand services and products, I think, provided by any business. And therefore, the potential is limitless in all business sectors, all verticals and markets. And again, Sudhakar, a quick question on this one. Would you agree in what I'm saying, that these roles that we're looking at here, just this small number, but there's a huge number of types of AI roles, that they're not actually just roles, they're actually careers? Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, exactly. They are careers to be made, and these are not just a few of those roles. You have big data analytics, you have many other roles that can fit into this AI domain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key consideration for people to think about AI. Both organizations that are looking for AI specialists and people that want to focus on AI for the work they want to do. It's not a specific role these days. It is going to be a career, and I think a long career. Technology changes so fast, but once we start moving into the world of AI, it's going to be around for a long time. It's going to evolve, so there will be evolution and re-education required going forward. But certainly it's one to consider for a future role, or a current and future role in IT, and also not even from IT, but from a business perspective. Businesses will be looking for these skills, AI skills, to help achieve successes, as opposed to some of the failures that Sudhakar has shown there. And there will be failures because organizations will look at it wrong, will have the wrong skill sets, will think AI is technology focused when it's not. It's more think about the business, think about what the business can achieve with AI, and will look for specialists that can think through both the business side and the technology side. And we just see more and more news stories about AI these days, not even just in the tech news. When we go home and switch on the news, there's generally some story about artificial intelligence from finance, from public sector, government, banking, telco, pharma. Um, there's even been AI and science used in creation of vaccines for the current times that we find ourselves in. It's so prevalent these days. And it is a very positive sign to see. I think, for example, when you look at the UK government supporting an initiative to drive the creation of an AI roadmap under a national strategy overseen by an AI council. So I think that's really, really positive because they're saying we want to understand what this is. We want to have structures in place to help us achieve the right things with AI. We want to put in an actual strategy to make sure we understand it. We have the right skills, we do the right thing, we make the right investments, we get the right results. And I think that's an example. This AI roadmap for the UK is a good model for businesses to adapt when thinking about what to do with AI, when thinking about how to do AI, and thinking about why they should do AI. Probably one of the first questions, maybe you agree or disagree, people should ask is why artificial intelligence in the first place? What will it do? And then start thinking through the next batch of questions. Is that a good question to start with?
Yes, exactly. In fact, we are coming up with a series of various blogs and a white paper to show the kind of a roadmap that should be utilized by organizations who need to adopt AI, not simply as a sales gimmick, but truly in the sense of using AI's vast technologies and its expertise.
It's fantastic. Yes, it's absolutely, I think, vital for organizations to have that type of information and to understand that that's where they should be starting from. But it's by no means the answer for them. They do have to go on that journey, but they do need a starting block. And the first thing should be why. So if there is a sales approach happening with an AI initiative, probably stop and ask of everybody involved, why are we doing this? Who can answer that question? And then probably go forward from there as opposed to anything else.
Mark, I would just like to interrupt you for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's happening is many of the organizations looking at the demand for AI are picking up this as a marketing term. And just because they have spreadsheets containing huge amount of data, they think analyzing a spreadsheet or some tables is equivalent to using AI, which is actually a sales gimmick. So organizations need to be very aware of such gimmicks and be really careful about how to start adopting AI as such.
That's fantastic advice. Yeah, what can be dressed up as AI can be very gimmicky or just sales approachy and not actually achieve anything AI related. So be very careful with that. But how do people understand that? That's why, for example, CCC Foundation was developed to at least give you the basic understanding of what AI is and how to start with an AI initiative to see past all, Sudhakar, I love the phrase, the sales gimmicky stuff, because it is there. It is, absolutely.
Very true.
Very good. That's a good point to make. And on a recent CCC Talks podcast, so I spoke with Muriel Chourier-Shepherd, and Muriel is another expert like Sudhakar in the field of AI. And an interesting observation from Muriel's work, I found this fascinating in AI, is far too many people don't know what AI actually is. I thought was fantastic. Even though we've had the phrase around for many, many years, we've talked about it in science fiction movies, and it's been around. In her studies, probably yourself, Sudhakar, your research, when you ask people what AI really is, and they start giving you answers, you get from that they really don't understand what AI really is.
True.
And I think there's too many, there's so many organizations that won't know what it is. So how will they be successful when they start looking at AI projects and initiatives? A little bit like what you're saying, Sudhakar, is you can be sold an AI initiative that turns out it isn't. That's very easy to happen if you don't know anything about AI at the end of the day. And on the
Exactly.
particular podcasts that we have, Muriel, so Sudhakar, you brought the quote from John McCarthy, which I really like, the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. Muriel, I think she mentioned that as well, and she mentioned another phrase that she uses to help people understand the basics of AI. And she describes AI as a toolbox. It's not a single tool, but it's a toolbox which can be used to. And if you want to hear the rest of that, head over to the CCC website and under resources, look for Muriel's session, where she goes into a bit more about this toolbox of AI that you can use to do intelligent things with. So it expands on the John McCarthy phrase, which I think is quite good. So I think that was a good session that we had from Muriel.
Interesting.
It is, and I think she the way it's put forward as it's a set of tools too. She doesn't quite answer that, but she gets you thinking you have to answer what you're trying to solve, and AI is a toolbox to try and solve that in a certain way, and it does certain things. And she expands on that a little bit, which gives a bit more scope. And again, it's similar to Sudhakar, the CCC AI Foundation. It gives you that understanding of what the toolbox is, what tools are in there, and how you might start using them, which I think was a good analogy back to our course as well, which I think was really good.
Exactly.
Next slide. So some details regarding the CCC Artificial Intelligence Foundation Certificate. So the CCC Artificial Intelligence Foundation course provides practical and critical knowledge and understanding of AI and how it is relevant today. The AI Foundation builds upon definitions, concepts, and the application of AI, and also introduces fundamentals such as databases, statistics, data visualization, and algorithms, key components of that toolbox or making intelligent machines. The CCC AI Foundation suits a very wide target audience. We've online self-paced learning experiences are available, are most popular. There's still always classroom-based learning available, but due to, I guess, will be limited for the current time. So we do have the what's new is the online variants of the AI Foundation course, which we're very excited about. Critical areas and learning outcomes include the understanding of the history and the origin of AI and machine learning. I think that's very important that we understand where AI has come from, how it's evolved, and what it is today. What it is today is different to what it was many, many years ago because of the change in technologies and what we can do. We understand the databases and their languages, different data types, statistics, data visualization, programming, different concepts and data structures, and all along the way creating algorithms. So I think it's a very broad area to look at, and also underlying all of this is the business aspect, the business case of using artificial intelligence. And so, you know, AI technology today is changing how businesses are being run. I think it's important really to look at why AI is different today and how it works with technologies of the past. And we do have to be aware that using AI technologies today do have to integrate with technologies from traditional IT and sometimes legacy. I think some good strategies to consider regarding your AI initiative and how you might look at this from a career perspective include skilling up, keeping pace with developments in technology, which I think we have to do anyway, understanding the impact of AI for our industry. That's important. Different industries will have different impacts from AI. Assess if artificial intelligence or machine learning can add value, you know, to your organization, and also earn a credible and career-enhancing certification from the CCC through the AI Foundation course. Next slide. And then how to get started. I think Joey is just going to take us through a few words on steps to get started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sudhakar. Thank you, Mark, for this deep dive into AI and what it can mean for any organization. Mark already mentioned it, and I think it makes sense to highlight how you can get access to the certification. There are two ways that you can prepare for the exam. Number one is to purchase the material through your training provider. CCC has training partners all over the world. The full list is available on the CCC website itself. And we'll also make sure to include a link in the email with the webinar recording. The second option, option number two, is to access the e-learning directly from the CCC website. And similarly, we'll add a link to the email you'll receive later this week. That brings us to the end of this session. And we have a little bit of time left for some questions. There are a lot more questions coming in that we have time for, but don't worry, we'll answer all of them via email. Some questions, Mark, Sudhakar, and specifically surrounding this course. I already played around with AI and Python a bit. Is this course still a good fit for me, or is it too much a beginner level course and certification?
Actually, this is more related to preparing yourself for working with AI. So the prerequisites. So if you are not only familiar with Python, but also with data structures and statistics, databases, data storage, data analytics, visualization. So these are some of the key requirements that an AI engineer should be familiar with before you start working with them, because AI itself is such a vast collection of technologies. We have robotics, we have computer vision, expert systems, we have different types of machine learning, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning, and so on. So to work with all these various different collections of technologies, you should be well prepared with your basic fundamentals that are required to work with AI. So just knowing Python programming and working with a little bit of AI will not help too much. You should be very thorough in all the aspects of all the features that I've just mentioned: databases, statistics, things like data stores, data storage, and big data concepts, and so on.
Absolutely, yeah. And then the other aspect in addition to all of that is the business are needing to have business conversations with technical people about AI. And any way you can upskill that language and understand a little bit more from the business perspective will absolutely help, because they're going to be the most scarce resources are those that can translate what the business is talking about into the technical functions within AI to make things work. That's going to be a really, really critical skill to have as well.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's also the perfect introduction to the next question. And we're nearing the 45-minute mark, so I think this will be the last question, and we'll answer the rest via email. So would it be a good course to see if AI is the right path forward for my organization?
Absolutely, yeah, because as we said, one of the first questions to ask is why? Why AI for your organization? Before you spend millions or whatever that large sum of money is, and maybe get a failure at the end, is try to avoid all of that. Is to ask intelligently, why are we doing AI? What problem can it solve? What advantage can it give us? As Sudhakar says, you know, why are we analyzing these spreadsheets here as an AI initiative? That's not AI. So trying to understand what isn't AI as much as what is, and then why we should be doing this to get the best investment from the money first off, to get a better chance of success or an early exit from your whatever you're doing early on and try something else. And that's vital. So I think this course kind of positions that view as well, and tries to get that mindset early on. So you spend intelligently. If it's not going to deliver, you exit early and you try something else, and eventually you will get there.
Perfect. I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sudhakar, for this session. And thank you for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.